When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject, Walter. User, CX12Anon. Posted, December 22nd, 1997.
Traveling in the winter has never been something I've enjoyed. Many of my friends like to take ski trips with their families or even rent out cabins in the country so they can spend Christmas soaking in a hot tub under the stars. More power to them. Being that I'm single, they used to invite me along, a practice it took several years' worth of no thank you to put an end to. It wasn't always like this. My husband Walter and I used to be Christmas at the cabin types too. It was a lovely little spot, a 2-bedroom with a gabled roof and big porch for cozy nighttime hot chocolates. The two of us wrapped in blankets. We were headed here in winter 1990 when the accident happened. It was the sort of thing that can hit any time, anywhere, and yet you never think it'll be you. About halfway between home and the cabin, there's a long straight stretch leading to a sharp left curve. After that, you cross a green single-lane bridge. Walter was driving, going a little faster than I'd have liked, when we hit a section of the road that was pure black ice. To make the corner up ahead and not crash into the steel barrier behind it, we needed to be going about half the speed we were. He pumped the brakes to no effect. We were still skidding toward the turn. Time seemed to slow down, and I could see every detail of the scene in front of us. Slushy white and brown hillocks of snow along the roadside, rounded rivets punched into the green steel of the bridge, the black, churning river underneath. I had enough time to reason that if we could just angle ourselves enough to hit the railing side on, it might be able to absorb our impact. It wasn't going to happen. Walter, bless him, always insisted on driving, but he was not good at making quick decisions and wasn't going to course correct us in time. We were headed straight at the barrier, meaning the Buick would easily punch through, carrying us into the river below. The time dilation almost made the actual impact an anticlimax, given how long it felt it had taken to finally get there. We lurched, our windshield spiderwebbing immediately, obscuring the world in front of us as our momentum carried the car over the embankment. Our final crash into that icy black water jarred time back to its normal flow. The front of the car went deep into the river, springing back up several feet after the rear end splashed down, but staying canted forward. Panic tried to claw its way up to my throat, making me want to thrash and kick. I pushed it back down with everything I had. If I let it take over, we were both dead. Wait, we? I looked over at Walter. He was lolling forward in his seat, blood covering his face. I shook his shoulder, hearing him moan weakly. We were bobbing crazily in the river, swept downstream by the current. I felt cold seeping into my shoes and looked down to see water beginning to pool in the footwells. "Walter, you have to wake up. We need to get out of here." Shoulder a second time. He moaned again, then nothing. I noticed a wide, sticky patch of blood on the hardest part of the steering wheel and understood why he was so out of it. Walter was almost 100 pounds heavier than me. I wasn't sure I could get him out of here on my own, and we needed to go, now. The water level had already gone from mid-door to just underneath the window. We were sinking fast. I twisted to look at him. Something was restraining me, and I fought against it for a moment before realizing it was my seatbelt. Thankfully, it opened with a single click, and I was able to focus on my husband. "Walter, please, get the fuck up." This time, there wasn't even a moan. I started fumbling with his seatbelt, frantically pressing the steel buckle. It wouldn't budge. The footwell was full up to my ankles now. Outside, the river lapped up over the windshield. My feet were starting to go numb. No matter what I did, Walter's seatbelt would not open. I needed something to cut it with. I yanked open the glove box, paper spilling out into the rising water. Behind them, I found 2 old pairs of sunglasses and Walter's stash of gummy bears he thought I didn't know about. Fuck, all this junk in here and none of it useful. Walter stirred in his seat, his voice thick with confusion. "Liz?" I leaned over to him. "I'm here, Walter. Your seatbelt is stuck. I can't get it open. You have to think, is there a knife anywhere in the car? Anything sharp at all we can use to cut you out?" He gently shook his head, the movement forcing a groan of pain from him. Suddenly, it wasn't just cold in the car, but dark as well. The windshield was fully submerged. My thighs were underwater. I put my hand on his neck. He was ice cold, his heartbeat rapid and shallow. "Walter, the car is sinking. The cabin is almost half full. We have to get you out of here." His lips were moving, the sound faint. I leaned closer, the words finally becoming clear. "I love you. Go." Over and over until his lips stopped moving. A sob rose in me, but there wasn't time to let it out. The cabin was full up to my chest. If I was gonna go, it had to be now. I gave my husband one last look, his thick, black hair, his soft lips, the checked green shirt and sweater I called his Mr. Rogers outfit. I tried to fix the image in my mind. If I had to leave him, I would never let myself forget a single detail. Closing my eyes, I took a deep, trembling breath in an attempt to slow my racing heart. Then, my eyes open, I cracked down the passenger side window, frigid water pouring in to fill the empty space. I took a single last breath as the car went under. My eyes stung. Everything was black. I wriggled out through the window, kicking hard against the car in an attempt to drive myself toward what I hoped was the surface. For a moment, I remembered the trip we'd taken to Maui the year before, how I'd been caught in a riptide and almost dragged out to sea. Walter had saved me, shouted at me from the beach, telling me to swim parallel to the shore rather than toward it. I'd kicked and kicked, eventually breaking free. Under the river's surface, my chest was starting to burn from lack of oxygen. Summoning the last of my energy, I swam as hard as I could at an angle to the current, feeling myself make some headway. Suddenly, there was light. 2 separate spots weaving above me, just out of reach. My legs stopped cooperating, then my arms. My chest spasmed, forcing me to inhale a lungful of river water. The world went away. Next thing I knew, I was laying on my side, vomiting water. A soothing voice told me I was safe. Someone brought me a blanket, wrapping me up in warmth. It allowed me, just for a moment, to pretend I was on the cabin porch, and Walter was just about to come through the door, holding 2 cups of cocoa.
Subject: Father Crispmas. User: HuntedRR23. Posted December 23, 1998.
Call me crazy, but I feel like haunted by a blackened corpse in a Santa suit should be the kind of thing a realtor has to put on a house's listing when it goes up for sale. I know, some of you right now are thinking, ghosts aren't real, check your carbon monoxide detector, blah, blah, blah. To any of those people listening, if you can pull your self-righteous head out of your ass for just a moment and evaluate the evidence someone is presenting you on its own merits instead of trying to fit it into the argument you've already built, I have a story to tell you. Beth and I have always been city people, but our old neighborhood has been on the decline for years. We held out as long as we could, watching the homeless problem get worse and worse. It's not that I have a personal issue with the homeless. It's a sad truth that most of us are only a couple missed paychecks away from the street. Just that meth use has become increasingly popular among them. Meth isn't known for its calming qualities, and so something as simple as a walk after dinner required us being on the lookout for potentially erratic behavior. Then Beth came home after work one day to find two men, high as kites, fist fighting in front of the entrance to our building. She told me afterward that it was a bad scene. The smaller of the two fighters, a wiry, bald guy, started taking big, roundhouse shots to the face and, in desperation, jammed his thumb all the way through the bigger man's eye, straight into his brain. It scared the hell out of her and was the push we needed to get out. That's how we ended up in this place. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, maybe half an hour outside the city we could only afford because it was cheaper than everything else on the market. Was that a red flag? Absolutely. Did we catch it? Not at all. There were far too many other moving parts pulling our focus, like getting our finances in place or having an inspector check out the structural integrity of the place. We took possession in September and started redecorating. It all started with white spots in the corner of our vision, always moving just a little further than we could turn to look. I'm not the superstitious type, or at least I didn't used to be, so I wrote the floaters off to a quirk of air pressure or temperatures, something like that, messing with my contact lenses. Imagine my surprise when I brought it up on a date in October and Beth said she'd been seeing the same things. Then, last night, the floaters went from the edge of our vision to center stage. Just after 3 a.m, I was down in the kitchen having a glass of water and a couple forkfuls of leftover lasagna when a ball of light roughly the size of a tennis ball floated up out of the kitchen drain. The light was so unexpected and completely outside any frame of reference I might have that I just stood there, my lasagna-stuffed mouth agape while it glided past me into the main hallway. From there, it passed up the stairs and out of my sight. A few seconds later, Beth screamed. I ran to her as fast as I could, nearly tripping over my own feet on my way into our bedroom. The nightstand light was on and she was sitting up, covers drawn to her chin. Beth's eyes were wild, fixed on a point at the foot of the bed. Once I was able to help her calm down, she said that she'd been dreaming of the Ponte Vecchio, a covered bridge in Florence, which we'd visited on vacation the year before. It was nighttime in the dream, and she was alone. All the little stalls and shops were lit up, just empty, as if everyone had walked away. Her footsteps echoed off the exposed stone walls as she looked for me. Then, from an alcove just ahead of her, stumbled out a burned skeletal figure in a bright red and white Santa suit. It stretched out a blackened hand, skin stretched tight over bone. Beth woke in fright to see that same figure standing in our bedroom and screamed. It didn't vanish right away. Instead, lingering for several seconds more until I burst through the door. Even if I hadn't seen the ball of light, I'd at least been willing to listen to what she had to say. Beth has been struggling with nightmares since witnessing the murder in front of our building, but they've never extended into the real world like that. I don't know why I saw a ball of light and she saw Father Crispmas, but I intend to find out.
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.